Dare to live below your means and above their expectations. Thoreau. There is a quiet rebellion happening. You will not see it trending. You will not find it on a billboard. It does not have a hashtag. It is the rebellion of the person who looks at everything the world is selling, the bigger house, the newer car, the louder life, and says, simply, no thank you. This is the rebellion Henry David Thoreau started in 1845 when he walked into the woods near Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts, built a small cabin with his own hands, and lived there for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. Not because he was poor, not because he had no options, but because he wanted to find out what life actually was, stripped of everything society told him he needed. What he discovered changed philosophy forever, and it is more relevant today than it has ever been. We live in the most distracted, most indebted, most overstimulated generation in human history. We work jobs we tolerate to buy things we do not need to impress people we do not even like. We upgrade constantly and feel empty constantly. We are surrounded by more than any previous generation, and yet we are haunted by a persistent, quiet feeling that we are somehow missing the point. Thoreau missed nothing. He saw it all clearly. And today, we are going to walk through his wisdom, timeless, radical, deeply practical, and apply it to your life right now. This is not about being poor. This is about being free. And if that kind of freedom speaks to something in you, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring you wisdom from history's greatest minds to help you live deeper, freer, and more intentionally. Let us begin. Before we get into Thoreau's philosophy, we need to understand the world we are fighting against. Because it is not neutral. It is not simply offering you options and letting you choose freely. It is engineered, with extraordinary precision, to keep you spending, consuming, comparing, and never quite satisfied. Every advertisement you have ever seen was built on one message: you are not enough yet. But if you buy this product, this upgrade, this experience, you will finally arrive. You will finally be admired. You will finally feel complete. And so we chase. We upgrade the phone before the old one breaks. We lease a car that costs more than our rent. We fill our homes with things we forget we own within weeks of buying them. We go into debt for weddings, vacations, and wardrobes, not because these things bring us joy, but because we are terrified of what people will think if we do not. Thoreau called this quiet desperation. He wrote that the mass of men led lives of quiet desperation. They are not screaming. They are not visibly miserable. They go to work. They smile at the right moments. They perform contentment. But underneath, there is a dull ache, a sense that they are living someone else's idea of a life. The world wants you expensive because an expensive life is a dependent life. When your survival requires constant income just to maintain your lifestyle, you are not free. You are employed by your own spending. Thoreau saw this trap 2 centuries ago, and he refused to walk into it. Here is what living below your means is not. It is not suffering. It is not deprivation. It is not wearing the same pair of shoes until they fall apart out of some misguided sense of virtue. It is not living without beauty, without pleasure, without comfort. What it is this: spending less than you earn, deliberately and consistently, so that the gap between your income and your expenses becomes your freedom fund. Your breathing room, your power. Thoreau reduced his life to its essentials and discovered something extraordinary. When you remove the excess, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is life itself. The morning light through a window. A long walk without a destination. A conversation that actually goes somewhere. A book read slowly, without interruption. The simple, devastating pleasure of a day that belongs entirely to you. Most people have never experienced a day like that, because most people's days belong to their obligations, which belong to their lifestyle, which belongs to their spending, which belongs to the trap they walked into willingly and called it success. Living below your means is an act of reclamation. You are taking back your time. You are taking back your attention. You are taking back the authorship of your own life. Thoreau wrote that a man is rich in proportion to the number of things he can afford to let alone. Read that again. Richness is not accumulation. It is the freedom to not need. The power to walk past the sale, decline the upgrade, and feel nothing but peace. That is the life we are building today. When Thoreau moved to Walden Pond, the people around him thought he had lost his mind. Here was a Harvard-educated man, son of a respectable family, walking away from the conventional path to live in a cabin he built himself, growing his own food, reading philosophy by candlelight, and writing about the sound of rain. By every conventional measure, he had failed. No prestigious career, no wife, no climbing of any recognizable ladder. And yet, by the end of his life and certainly after, he had written one of the most widely read and deeply influential books in American literary history. He had changed how millions of people understood freedom, simplicity, and the purpose of a human life. He did not just live below his means. He lived above every expectation that society tried to place on him. And that is the radical combination this video is about. These two things together, below your means and above their expectations, are not in contradiction. They are the same movement. When you stop spending your energy trying to meet everyone's expectations financially, socially, professionally, you free up enormous creative power. Power that goes into your actual work, your actual gifts, your actual contribution to the world. The person who is not trying to impress anyone has nothing to hide and nothing to perform. They can take risks that the approval seeker cannot. They can fail publicly without being destroyed. They can say what they actually think. They can build what they actually believe in. That is not a small life. That is a large one. Let us talk about something almost no one talks about honestly. The real cost of keeping up with expectations. Not just the financial cost, though that is staggering, but the invisible costs. The ones that do not appear on any invoice but accumulate quietly in your body, your relationships, and your sense of self. The financial cost first. The average person in the modern world spends decades of their working life paying interest on things they no longer own or enjoy. They bought the car on credit. They put the vacation on the card. They upgraded the kitchen before the mortgage was halfway paid. The interest alone, the price of wanting things before you can afford them, would be enough to retire years earlier if it were redirected. But the invisible costs are worse. When you are living at the edge of your income, or beyond it, you cannot afford to take creative risks. You cannot quit the job that is slowly hollowing you out. You cannot say no to a client who disrespects you. You cannot take 6 months to write the book, start the business, rebuild the life. You are trapped, not by lack of talent or vision, but by the cost of the lifestyle you chose. And then there is the psychological cost. The constant performance of success is exhausting. The monitoring of how you appear. The anxiety of maintenance. The fear that someone will see through the image and discover that beneath the curated exterior is a person who is barely keeping it together. Thoreau stepped off this treadmill entirely. He stopped performing. He started living. And the difference, he wrote, was everything. One of the most important things to understand about Thoreau, and about this entire philosophy, is that simplicity is not an economic condition. It is a philosophical one. It is a choice made by a person who has looked carefully at what truly contributes to a good life and what merely adds noise. Thoreau's famous line was this: simplify, simplify. Not because complex things are bad, but because most of the complexity in modern life is not serving the life, it is serving the image of the life. And these are very different things. A simpler wardrobe does not make you less interesting. A smaller home does not make you less worthy. A used car does not make you less intelligent. These are not measures of a person. And the moment you stop treating them as measures, the moment you stop letting the size of your possessions reflect the size of your worth, something enormous shifts inside you. You begin to notice what actually makes you feel alive. For most people, it is not things. It is experiences, depth, connection, creativity, solitude, nature, mastery, meaning. These things are often free or nearly free, and yet we spend fortunes chasing substitutes for them, status symbols that promise to deliver the feeling without the substance. Thoreau lived on approximately $28 for an entire year at Walden. And he described that year as one of the richest of his life. Not because deprivation is noble, but because he was finally living in alignment with what actually mattered to him. And that alignment, that integrity between values and actions, is the source of genuine human flourishing. Simplicity is not poverty. Simplicity is clarity, and clarity is the beginning of everything. We are taught from childhood to want more. More toys, more clothes, more experiences, more achievements, more recognition. The engine of wanting more is what drives the economy, fills the schools, fuels the careers. And we absorb this lesson so completely that we eventually cannot distinguish between what we genuinely want and what we have been told to want. Thoreau proposed something that felt, and still feels, almost offensive in its simplicity. Want less, not as an act of resignation, not as an acceptance of defeat, but as an active, deliberate, philosophically grounded choice to desire only what is real and reject what is merely advertised. When you want less, you need less. When you need less, you work less of your life away servicing needs. When you work less of your life away, you have more of your life left for living. The math is devastating in its simplicity. And yet almost no one does it, because wanting less is socially invisible and wanting more is socially celebrated. Think about the last 10 things you spent money on that you did not truly need. Now think about what those purchases actually cost, not just in dollars, but in hours of your life spent earning those dollars. Every purchase is not just a financial transaction. It is a transaction in time, in life, in freedom. Thoreau understood that time was the only currency that mattered, and he refused to trade it cheaply. Every hour of his day belonged to something real, to thought, to observation, to creation, to connection with the natural world. No hour was sacrificed to maintaining a lifestyle designed to impress strangers. Want less, live more. This is not a bumper sticker. This is a life strategy of the highest order. Thoreau did not go to the woods to escape life. He went to find it. He wrote that he wanted to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if he could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when he came to die, discover that he had not lived. That phrase, discover that he had not lived, is one of the most haunting in all of literature. Because it describes the quiet terror that visits most people in their honest moments. The suspicion that they have been very busy, very productive, very responsible, and somehow missed the point entirely. The woods taught Thoreau what silence teaches everyone who is brave enough to sit in it. That most of what you think you need, you do not need. That most of the noise filling your days is self-generated. That the mind, left to itself without constant stimulation, is not bored. It is creative, observant, wise, and deeply at peace. We are terrified of silence now. We fill every quiet moment with content. Podcasts in the shower, music on the commute, scrolling before bed. Not because we are curious. Because we are afraid of what we might hear if we stopped. Afraid of the questions. Afraid of the gaps. Afraid of the voice that says, "Is this the life I actually chose?" Thoreau sat with that voice for 2 years. And it changed him permanently. It can change you too. Not in 2 years in a cabin, but in 20 minutes of honest silence each day. Sit with your life. Listen to it. It is trying to tell you something. Let us name them directly. The expectations that most people spend their entire lives trying to meet. Not because they genuinely want to, but because the fear of not meeting them is too great to examine clearly. The expectation to have a respectable career, to own property by a certain age, to be in a committed relationship, to have children and raise them in a particular way, to dress a certain way at a certain income level, to take vacations to certain kinds of places, to live in certain kinds of neighborhoods, to have a certain kind of story that you can tell at dinner parties without watching people's eyes glaze over with discomfort. None of these expectations are inherently wrong. Some of them may align perfectly with what you genuinely want. But the question Thoreau forces us to ask is, have you actually examined them? Or did you simply inherit them, absorb them from your family, your culture, your generation, and begin building your life around them before you ever decided if they were yours? Because the cost of living someone else's expectations is your actual life. Not a dramatic, movie-style loss. A quiet, daily diminishment. The choices not made. The paths not taken. The creative risks not risked. The version of yourself that never quite got to exist because you were too busy becoming the version that was expected. Thoreau refused the expected life and built an examined one. He was criticized for it in his lifetime. And he is celebrated for it across centuries. The expectations that felt so urgent in 1845 Massachusetts are completely irrelevant now. What remains is the man who dared to live on his own terms. Your expectations will feel equally irrelevant in 100 years. The question is what you do with that knowledge today. You do not need a cabin. You do not need a forest. You do not need 2 years of sabbatical or a dramatic reinvention of your entire life. The philosophy of Thoreau is not a destination, it is a direction. And you can take one step in that direction today, in your actual life, with the actual resources you have right now. Start by auditing your spending, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Look at the last 3 months of transactions. For each one, ask, did this contribute to my actual well-being, or was it purchased in service of an image? You do not have to change anything yet. Just see clearly. Clarity is always the first step. Then audit your time. Where are the hours going? How much of each day is genuinely yours, spent in alignment with what you value, and how much is spent in service of obligations that have accumulated because you never examined whether you actually wanted them? Then identify one expectation, from your family, your culture, your professional world, that you have been carrying without choosing. Just one. Look at it. Ask whether it is yours. Ask what your life might look like if you gently put it down. You are not Thoreau. You do not have to be, but you have the same capacity he had. The capacity to stop, to look, to question, and to choose. That capacity is the most underused human faculty in the modern world. And it costs nothing. It requires only the courage to be honest with yourself about what you are doing and why. Start there. Start today. Here is what no one tells you about living below your means and above their expectations. The freedom on the other side is not what you imagine. It is better. You imagine it as a kind of relief, a loosening of pressure. And yes, that is part of it. When your expenses drop significantly below your income, the physical sensation in your body is genuinely different. The tightness in your chest when you check your account, gone. The low-grade anxiety that hums beneath every workday because you cannot afford to lose this job, gone. The feeling that you are always one unexpected expense away from crisis, gone. But the deeper freedom is something else entirely. It is the freedom of self-authorship. When you are not spending your life trying to meet expectations, financial, social, professional, you discover that the space left behind is creative space. Imaginative space. The space where your actual dreams, your actual questions, your actual contributions to the world begin to take shape. Thoreau went to the woods to find out what he was made of. What he discovered was a writer, a philosopher, a naturalist, a political thinker of extraordinary depth. He discovered Walden. He discovered civil disobedience, the essay that would later influence Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. He discovered himself. You will not discover yourself in the noise. You will not find your deepest gifts while performing a life designed for someone else's approval. The real you, the creative, curious, courageous version of yourself that has been waiting patiently beneath the performance, lives in the quiet. In the simplicity, in the life lived deliberately, below the noise and above the expectations. That life is available to you. It has always been available to you. Thoreau's great gift was simply pointing at it and saying, "It is right there. Go." Henry David Thoreau died at 44 years old. When a friend asked him on his deathbed if he had made his peace with God, Thoreau replied, "I did not know we had quarreled." That is the answer of a man who had lived without pretense, without performance, without the quiet desperation that eats most people from the inside. He had lived exactly as he chose, thought exactly as he believed, written exactly what he saw. He owed no one an apology for the life he had built, because he had built it entirely, consciously, on his own terms. That is the inheritance he left us. Not a fortune, not an empire, a philosophy, a question, a dare. Dare to live below your means. Dare to want less than the world tells you to want. Dare to measure your wealth not in possessions but in freedom, in the number of mornings you wake up without dread, in the number of hours that belong genuinely to you, in the depth and honesty of the life you are actually living. And dare to live above their expectations, above the inherited script, above the conventional path that leads to conventional regret. Dare to examine your life and then, having examined it, dare to actually change it, in the direction of what is real, what matters, what is yours. You will be misunderstood. Thoreau was misunderstood. You may be criticized. Thoreau was criticized. You may feel alone in the direction you are choosing. Thoreau often did, but he never, not once, wished he had lived someone else's life instead. Can you say that today? If not, start moving toward the day when you can. The woods are waiting. The simplicity is waiting. The version of your life that is genuinely yours, unperformed, uncompromised, deeply alive, is waiting. Go find it. If this message reached something real in you today, if Thoreau's wisdom gave you something you needed, please subscribe to this channel. Every single week, we go deep into the philosophy and lives of history's greatest thinkers so that you can live with more freedom, more clarity, and more courage. Hit subscribe. Share this with one person who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what you are daring to let go of. You found this video for a reason. Do not waste it. See you next week.